Hello everybody, thank you so much for joining me here on the BBC Arts website. Now look where we are. We're in glorious Tyneside for the Great Exhibition of the North. Now I'm on the Newcastle side of the quayside, and over there you can see the Sage Gates Head gleaming in the sunshine, and behind me over there is the Tyne Bridge. It is a wonderful day here on Tyneside. It's as though somebody up there knew what was going on today. The Great Exhibition of the North opens proper in about 1 hour's time. All the exhibitions will be open to the public. And this is a celebration of the pioneering spirit of the North. So over 80 days across the summer, there's just going to be an incredible programme of events, something to please everybody that the public are being urged to come along and take part in. Now tonight, of course, is the big opening night. There's going to be a huge extravaganza on the Tyne, fireworks, performances, drones, lights, fountains, you name it. Now the 20,000 tickets that were available have all been snapped up, but don't worry, we'll tell you how you can still be part of the fun later on. Now with me, I'm so pleased to introduce one of the performers from the event, Dr. Kate Fox. I thought I'd better throw that in there, Kate. Poet and stand-up comedian. Thank you so much for joining us,
Pleasure.
Kate.
Thank
now,
you.
First of all, look at this view. Do you ever get tired of it?
No, never. But I feel differently about it today. I have the feeling of there's loads of journalists and visitors not from round here, and I am so happy they are seeing it in its best light. So there's almost a sort of pride, which is weird, isn't it?
Northern pride.
Well
Northern
done,
pride.
well done, Quayside. You're looking good.
Yeah, they've turned it up for the occasion, haven't
yeah.
they? Now, you're taking part in the exhibition. Tell me, what is your involvement?
Basically, I've been asked to make a show that I have now made called Where There's Muck, There's Bras. That's a takeoff of the expression where there's muck, there's brass, just in case there's anyone who pronounces both bras and brass. Brass. The same. Some people do, apparently. It's about Northern women, and it's about the Northern women that I think we should remember, and the ones that we've forgotten and we shouldn't have done. And it's kind of, and this will sound a weird genre of thing, it's a stand-up performance lecture with a theatrical element, as in there's an actor in it, basically. And she brings some of the Northern women to life. So we'll meet Hilda of Whitby, who it turned out was fond of a pun. Who knew? In my show, she's very fond of a pun. Ellen Wilkinson, the MP who led the Jarrow March, all sorts of women, basically.
So you wrote this show specially for this event?
Exactly, yeah.
And how did you feel when you were asked to be part of it? Because you are a Northern woman, obviously.
Indeed, yeah.
And you fly the flag for Northern women, don't you?
I felt both pleased and weirdly, I want to say relieved a bit, because I'd suggested the idea, having had a bit of a fear that, as with so many Northern exhibitions, shows, things, it would be very man-tastic, and we would see a recycling of the many roles of Northern men that we know about, the classic Northern curmudgeon, of which probably Gary Verity, who's in charge of the Great North Exhibition, is a prime example, in a good way. They get stuff done.
Controversial.
I've met him in a good way. But so actually, I thought, it's the exhibition organisers are clearly open to a much broader view of the North. And actually, as I've learned more about the exhibition, I think there's quite a big, well, that's part of the reason behind it, isn't it? To say, look, the North is not just the past and blokes and white people.
They want to dispel that myth,
yeah,
and they want to look to the future, not just the past.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were overall pleased.
Sorry, in summary, that was quite a long way to say. I was happy, Sharuna, I was basically happy. Jobs are
good. Glad we got that bit out the way. So you put forward this show, they said, yes, we like it. You went away to write it. So you just mentioned that it's all about great Northern women.
Yeah.
How did you choose who was going to be in the show? There must have been too many to choose from.
God, that was honestly the nightmarish thing. The more I began researching, and it started with a Facebook post, as all good research does. Can you think of any Northern women? And people were there were so many that I had not thought about. How I've chosen is just to pick a few almost headline examples I mean, I probably mention 100 women in the show, and we focus on maybe about 10 of them. And then I've got a website, wherethere'smuckthere'sbras.com, with more of the women on, and I want to keep that as an ongoing website, an ongoing resource, because I feel almost ashamed that I hadn't heard of. So Ellen Wilkinson, MP, who led the Jarrow March. I mean, she was a brilliant woman from Manchester, but was MP for Middlesbrough at first and then Jarrow. Or a woman like Hilda James from Liverpool, who I'm going to guess you've probably not heard of. Hilda
I haven't,
James.
although I am from that neck of the woods.
See, and even more so, it's when
I
these
know,
people were
shame
really
on
close
me.
to us.
Yeah.
She was known as the English Comet. She was a swimmer. She introduced the front crawl to Britain. So anyone doing this, thanks to Hilda James, because she learned it from the American team. Yep, in the, I think, the 1924 Olympics. And she was like, hang on, they've all beaten me with this weird new stroke. And she went and learned it, brought it back to Britain, beat everybody, because it is the fastest way of swimming, as I have now discovered, because I learned front crawl. That's my commitment to my art.
What, since you wrote the
yeah,
play?
which is a bit weird. I got obsessed a bit with Hilda James, who is brilliant. But her story is also really sad, because so she's known as the English Comet. She breaks all these records. She's tipped to do really well in the Antwerp Olympics. And then her mum, who's always been really jealous of her, says, well, unless the Olympics committee pay for me a place, you can't go. And it all kicks off. Her dad beats her really badly so that she can't even sit down, and she ends up not going to that Olympics, where she would probably have won a gold. And she eventually went to work on Cunard liners as a celebrity coach, married one of their engineers, had a lovely happy marriage, but basically gave up what was a really exciting career.
And she never achieved her potential.
She never achieved it. And she, given where we are near Tynemouth, it turned out, so I lived in Tynemouth near Newcastle for a long time. I love it. She opened Tynemouth Open Air Pool in 1925. And they're campaigning to get that pool reopened. And it's like, it's as if there's these links, but how can I, there should be a statue of her somewhere, but there isn't. And there's lots of women like that, actually. So, yeah.
Don't let that put you off. I do
There's
not
a lot
know.
of building
I do
going
not
on
know
here.
what's going on behind us at the moment. But
they're literally.
It's obviously very important. Probably something to do with tonight.
Yeah, they don't care. There's a live studio.
Whatever. Yeah,
we've got to build
just go
stuff.
past the pod. It's fine.
Yeah, fine.
So that's one fascinating woman amongst hundreds.
Among hundreds, yeah.
And was there anybody apart from this lady that really resonated with you?
She definitely resonated the most, but probably also, actually, Ellen Wilkinson, that MP who did, because she was one of the first Labour MPs when there were just 4 women MPs at the time she was. They didn't even have a toilet for them. They had to walk a quarter of a mile down a corridor for a special toilet that these 4 women shared. So quite often they wouldn't bother. Don't quite know what they did instead. Anyway, let's not think about that. And she was a journalist. She wrote The Town That Was Murdered about Jarrow, led the march. But you look at a book by, I don't want to have a go at Stuart McConey. He's a great spokesman for all things Northern. But his book is fairly typical about Jarrow in having blokes. No women, because
It's the male viewpoint, though, isn't it?
oh,
History seen through male eyes. That's the issue. So
yeah.
that's why we need people like you, Kate, to fly the flag.
and do some of the remembering. Although actually I've needed a lot of people to. But actually that act of going, because there's a poem I do. I think I'll probably do a bit of it later. But it's a roll call, really, a list of lots of women, some of which we'll have heard of, some of which we haven't. And it's somehow that act of just going, yeah, I see you. Oh, I remember you. Oh, and you, we're not going to forget. That's actually, it turns out, quite a political thing, I think. But you can do it in a really entertaining, funny, accessible way without necessarily raising money for a statue. That'd be more fun.
Yeah. So when you did your research about all these women, did you find that they all, apart from being women and apart from being Northern, did they have any similar characteristics?
No, I would, well...
Was there any threads that you discovered, or were they all very, very individual?
Very, very individual, and I'm torn on this because I want to always fight against the myth of the resilient, strong northern woman. At the same time, I love that myth. That's a good myth, that, because there are a lot of strong, resilient northern women who've had to overcome a lot of obstacles to do whatever it was that they achieved. Got to be tough.
Yeah.
And often that toughness is, there's a front to it, and there's a, be it laughing or, you know, a real balls. Oh no, I was going to say ballsiness. No, that's using male imagery again.
Oh, it's so hard though, isn't it? Because it's so part of society.
It's ingrained in our language, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the same time, grit. But I think we also need to make space for more subtle forms of resilience.
Okay, so if I was to ask you then, what do you think are the characteristics of women of the North in general? What do you think they bring to the table?
I think they have been formed by particular. This is going to sound like a very academic answer. I'll try to put it in a friendly way. But I want to say there are certain conditions that apply to everybody who's born in the North, lives in the North, has come to be in the North, which is the North has always had less money, even during the Industrial Revolution, although that was a bit of an exception. It's had less power because the power's always been concentrated in London and the South. Therefore, there's always been a sense of being a bit out on a limb, a bit of having to do things more for yourself, and often a sense of being exploited. There's a heck of a lot of historical trauma that has impacted families in the North by often being exploited by employers. All that does mean there are certain conditions that lead to probably what you could say is a certain type of direct, no-nonsense, strong, gritty northernness. But, as I say, I'd like to also think a kind of quiet, subtle, the opposite of that. That's equally northern, really.
Well, we've not got a great deal of time left, but I just wanted to point out that I didn't mention before, but Kate has a PhD in class, gender and northernness. So if anybody's an expert on this subject,
literally an expert,
it's you. Okay, so northern women do matter.
Yes.
And you write poetry.
I do.
Signalling that fact. So can you give us a little bit of poetry before we say goodbye?
Yeah, this is part of the roll call poem. So, Cartimandua was a northern queen, who you've probably not heard of, more powerful and cannier than Boadicea. What makes one woman linger in the memory and another disappear? An unsculpted statue cannot crumble. An unpainted portrait cannot fade. A memory cannot be forgotten if it was never made. So we'll remember Hilda of Whitby, Celtic saint, good at teaching and admin and putting people off sin. We'll remember Hilda Ogden and all the other women of Corrie and Brookie, even Hollyoaks, carrying northern women's fears and hopes. We'll remember Olympians, Rebecca Adlington, Nicola Adams, Kat Copeland, Jessica Ennis, Lottie Dodd, first ever woman to win Wimbledon ladies tennis. You've probably not heard of her. I'm going to cut to the end. We'll cut to the end because I'm aware. So imagine, long list of other women, some of whom you've heard of, some of whom you've not. And then the last verse to that bit is, but shout about the women around you now. Look at them, appreciate them. It's not just about history and being able to carbon date them.
I should be going, Kate Fox,
Yay!
Kate Fox. Let's shout about
Sharuna
Kate Fox.
Sagar
Thank
also.
you, thank you.
Thank
Oh,
you.
that was wonderful, Kate. Thank you so much. Right, I've got to say goodbye to you now because we're running out of time. But everyone out there, please stay on the BBC Arts live page. We're going to be here all day. If you didn't get a ticket for tonight's event, don't panic because you're not going to miss out on the celebration as long as you stay logged in with us. And that's all I need to say really about that for now. But don't forget, we're back at 3 o'clock. I will have Paul Smith from Maximo Park with me.